Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Star Wars, brought to us by Namco. This is the infamous Japanese-only Famicom Star Wars title. It's released in 1987 and never saw light of day outside of Japan. The game is known for just being, well, a bit goofy, for sure, as it's based on A New Hope, but it does change a lot about the overall story. Most of the game involves you going to various planets, many of which aren't involved in the original plot to A New Hope, and tracking down your various companions that are part of your crew, and fighting doppelgangers of Darth Vader. Various creatures and aliens have disguised themselves as Darth Vader, and you end up battling them as the game's bosses. The game is exceptionally difficult, and because of that, it's taken me several years to finally play the game enough to be able to pull off this run, and it still isn't perfect. This run is being done on the harder of the two difficulty settings. The game is one-hit death, and because of this, it makes the game exceptionally difficult to get through. Also, because the hitbox around Luke and other enemies is, a bit off for sure, as there's plenty of moments where you can easily get hit and die from an enemy where it doesn't necessarily make sense for you to have. When we make it to the main menu, you can go Novice or Pro. Like I said, we're going to do the harder difficulty here and go to Pro. This is the translated version of the game, the fan-translated version. This translation's been around for quite a while and isn't perfect either, but it gives you a general idea of what the dialogue is. Many of the planet names in particular are a bit weird, but at least Tatooine, the desert planet, is one that we get to start off with and is correctly named here in the translation. The game, for the most part, is a side-scroller platformer that you've come to know and love, especially during the NES era. You use your lightsaber to attack enemies. It has a weird hit radius that will take you a while to get used to if you ever quite get used to it. For the most part, I try to avoid enemies. However, by defeating them, they drop the crystals, the force crystals, and this allows you to use Luke's various power-ups or force powers that you get throughout the course of the game, some of which you need to use and other ones are very helpful. For example, here we have the first of the doppelganger battles. This is one of the only fights where we're going to run in and immediately attack Darth Vader. If you do so quickly, you can knock him back to get into the Scorpion form. Yes, the Scorpion form. It'll then move back and forth and takes 4 hits to defeat. Just kind of keep your distance. It's the easiest of these fights that we're going to be dealing with, and as long as you have a little bit of distance between you and the Scorpion, it's not too bad. Once you complete it and go into the next room, be sure to attack the electricity protecting R2-D2 and the Jawas, because if you don't do that, you will die if you run into them, so it's just another wonderful trap. Right outside of that, we're going to use the land speeder here to kind of get across. We make a couple of careful jumps and get into, I guess would be Mos Eisley, where we escape in the Millennium Falcon. We don't have to do anything else there on Tatooine. Between every one of the worlds in this game, you have to do the sequence where you battle TIE fighters. It's a bit redundant for sure, you just have to keep taking out wave after wave. It's instant death if even one of their blasts hits you. The key is trying to get away from the blast or using your shield. You have your blaster that you're going to be mostly using to fire at the TIE fighters, but the other button brings up a protective shield that will take away one of the fire from the TIE fighters, which will save you in a pinch. But you only have the 3 per round with the TIE fighters, so use them sparingly and try to get used to getting away from the TIE fighters. The thing with them is, you can't chase them down. When they're going too far towards the left, right, up, or down, and you're trying to chase them, they're going to keep going. So instead, go the opposite direction, and when they hit the wall of the screen, they'll then come back towards you, and that gives you the opportunity to hit them. Also, keep firing and concentrate your fire towards the center of the screen, and usually a lot of TIE fighters, when they first spawn, you'll be able to take them out instantly, saving you at least a little bit of headache. Don't worry, you'll get plenty of time to get used to the TIE fighters. However, what you're probably never going to get used to is the platforming. It's just a little bit difficult. The floatiness of Luke is significant, so he has this really high jump that can be useful, but also can be detrimental to actually making it through areas without getting hurt. Here, the second world is Kessel. Yes, as in the Kessel Run. This planet we didn't really get to see before, and in fact, didn't actually make a canonical appearance now until Star Wars Rebels finally showed it off, so here's a wonderful non-canonical version of Kessel. This version of Kessel has a lot of wonderful vines in a lot of the areas so you can safely make it up, as well as plenty of just standing blocks. I guess they're ruins of what used to be there, but they're perfectly aligned so we can get up to the top here. Be careful at the top, though. There is spikes at that last platform, and you can run into them easily. The last little bit before we go inside of this pyramid structure is a few stormtroopers and the like, but if you do a nicely timed jump, you can get past most of them. Once inside here, be careful making it through this room and work your way up top. Stand right here to the right. Don't jump off of the ladder. If you stand there for just a moment, the one enemy will go off screen and you don't have to deal with them. The next room is a little bit harder, waiting for them to kind of get around, so just take your opening when you have it and quickly get up those right blocks so you can make it to the next boss battle. This time, with Vader, you want to get in and immediately attack him. He won't attack first if you go in there quickly. However, once he turns into the flying dinosaur bone version of himself, he's going to quickly fly around, bounce off the corners of the room, and then come crashing down, usually in a V-like pattern. Just try to stay out of the range of that diagonal dive down and keep hitting him until he's gone. Next area, you want to drop on down, be very careful, and then you're going to use your force ability, the one that looks like a feather, to float on down. This isn't a shortcut or anything. This is what you need to do actually here to get through. It's one of the very, very many difficult instant death traps that are in this game. After that, though, we run into Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we have another land speeder segment. This one a little bit trickier than the last one, so I'm going to take my time a bit. You can slow down a little, which can greatly help you, but the gigantic jump is fantastic for getting away from most of the hazards throughout the area, getting yourself to the cave at the end, and then going up into space for the next TIE Fighter battle. As you make it to each segment, you kind of get a little preview of who you're about to go save with a little message that they give you as you go into the TIE Fighter segment. Unfortunately, these don't really change up at all, so you have plenty of practice with them, but you're also going to probably get bored with them. Thing is, though, you got to be diligent and keep paying attention, because at a moment's notice, one of those bullets can come out and take out the Millennium Falcon. And there's so few lives throughout this game, you'll need every one you possibly can get. The next world we're going to be traveling to is an all-water covered planet called Escalon, where we're going to be saving C-3PO. This planet was actually not in, of course, any of the films, however, was first mentioned in one of the issues of the Star Wars comic, and then made a few appearances throughout in the comic itself, and has gotten a couple of mentions in other video games, for example, but is one of those ones that is kind of interesting that it's included at all in this title. Be very careful while swimming throughout this area with all the fish swimming in between them. You kind of swim a little bit weird. It's a bit heavy as far as sinking and the like, but it actually isn't too bad maneuvering. As far as the platforming, everything else goes in this game, this segment isn't too bad. The only issue that I really have with it is it's very easy to get stuck against the walls. So sometimes trying to get around a corner or the like, you may get stuck, and an enemy potentially could run into you that way. Sometimes, though, it's best just to wait a moment for the enemies to kind of get past you, and then sneak on by to continue swimming your way through these ruins. A few blocks, thankfully, can get destroyed. Be very careful at the end here before going inside here to deal with the next Darth Vader battle. This Vader turns into a shark once we hit it. Thankfully, it's not too hard to hit the Vader part, but then when it comes into the shark, you want to attack it from only behind. Don't try to get in front of it to attack it, you'll just end up missing. It actually isn't too bad to hit as far as the hit radius you need on it in order to do damage to the shark. Just make sure that you keep at least a little bit of distance away from it so it doesn't run into you. Once the shark's taken care of, though, you get right back into the Millennium Falcon, and we're moving on to the next segment. Next world is actually the first time we're going to be going and dealing with the Death Star, saving Leia. We then go to a bunch of other planets and the like before making our way back and dealing with the Death Star later on in the game. Just weird how they've done so much different with this game. At least during this segment, and all the segments using the TIE Fighter, you get to see the planet, or in this case the Death Star, in the background. So the background at least changes up, even though the gameplay really doesn't change up that much. Like I said, just make sure you don't chase the TIE Fighters down. If they're going towards a wall and you can't get them within the first second or so of you moving towards them, stop and go the opposite way, and they'll bounce off and start coming back towards you, usually right back into your line of fire. Eventually, we'll destroy enough of the TIE Fighters to finally now land inside of the Death Star for one of the more confusing levels in this game. There are several different kind of like paths, rooms, hallways, and the like through this, but this is just the easiest way to kind of get through this without glitching. In fact, in this very first room, you can use a glitch to fly up into the air above the screen and get all the way out of this area and onto the Millennium Falcon, leaving it and moving to the next level, instantly saving Leia along the way, I guess. However, the correct way to do this level is a bit of a pain. You have a lot of really tricky platforming. As you can see, these kind of towers, lots of spikes around. Be very cautious, don't do too high of a jump with these stormtroopers so that their blast comes at you. They will fire pretty much as soon as they're on screen. In this big corridor, fall down multiple levels and go here. This is where the prisons are located. Be careful not to go past the prison in which Leia is in. The other ones just contain a few extra items and the like, including one with just a couple of enemies. The fourth one over there we're going to open up and save Princess Leia. We'll then be back out into the hallway. We're going to go to the end and end up inside the garbage compactor. Just be careful of the stormtrooper at the end of the hallway here, open up the grate, and fall into the trash compactor. Once down here, eventually this alien will show itself, the two eyes you'll have to destroy. Once they're done though, it will start to close in on you. What you need to do is pull up your menu and talk to one of your friends, in this case, R2-D2. This is something that we have to start doing consistently from the rest of the game in certain areas, or else you'll end up losing a life or be completely stuck. So use R2-D2, it opens up the door, and we can go through. Now, heading through here, we're going to drop down a couple of layers. If you're here in this room with the two stormtroopers, you know you're on the right level. Coming up, we're going to have a pretty challenging jump that looks like you should take a short jump, which is actually really difficult to pull off. It's possible, but more often than not, you're going to end up losing a life. Over here, you want to fall down and to the left. You'll notice these spikes. These are the ones I'm talking about. Instead of going the lower path, you want to actually jump in between them using a big jump, and you'll make it through. As long as you don't kind of like hesitate at all, just push on through, and don't run into the aliens, of course, you will end up being able to make that jump without hitting the spikes. Doesn't look like you can, but trust me, you can. Be very careful in this room heading up, destroying the blocks so you can land safely and then get up again. And then the next room with the droids bouncing all around, just get away from them, stand to the left side. Usually one will immediately go off screen not too long after you get into the room, and then you can just try to bypass the other one. Hitting them is just way too difficult. You do have the Force ability to destroy enemies, so if you have the Force crystals to spare, you can also do that at times, but you need the abilities like this one here to float across this gap, and they cost more crystals. So destroying more enemies, you'll be able to do more of the Force abilities, but just keep in mind you need to have some to do certain abilities. Once up here, we're going to get to the next floor and then over to the left side. Be very careful of the lasers firing down and jump in between the various blasts on the bottom, leading to the showdown against Darth Vader. This is actually a battle against Vader. He doesn't transform. This is a really, really tough fight. Start off, wait for him to attack, then getting close. Unlike before where we ran him really quickly, he can start to attack faster now, so you gotta be cautious of that. Once you deliver one hit, talk to Obi-Wan. Then you'll get into the actual fight with Vader where you can hurt him. If you don't talk to Obi-Wan, you can't do damage to Vader. The best strategy is to wait for Vader to attack, jumping over him, or just straight up jumping over him where he'll swing forward as you do so. Attack him from behind and immediately get away from him. If you try to attack in between his lightsaber swings, more often than not, he will hit you first and you'll end up losing a life. After another thrilling TIE Fighter battle, we're going to be on an ice planet saving Chewbacca. Now your first thought is that it's an ice planet, so it's got to be Hoth. However, in this translated version, it's Planet Tina. The thing is, though, the actual translation from the game is Tina, so it's correctly translated. There's some other information in the game, people talk about it, that say it's pretty much supposed to be Hoth, or at least it's treated like Hoth, but in this game, it's listed as Planet Tina. So here we are on the surface of Tina, the ice planet. Jump over the first couple of enemies, nothing really too challenging. The flying enemies above will start to come down after you get near them, but you can just run underneath them quickly before they even start crashing down. On this platform, take out the stormtrooper and then deal with the flying enemy towards you before jumping to the platforms. You have to be exceptionally careful with your jumps here that you don't jump too high and hit one of the flying enemies above, or you're probably going to end up falling into the icy pit and lose a life. The platforming in this whole area is exceptionally difficult with the single platforms and the ice that you have to deal with. Here, wait for the stormtrooper to come to you, and it'll turn its back and start going the opposite way. That's when you want to jump up, just so you don't accidentally run into hit or its fire, or you'll end up in the water below. Here, you can grab the laser power-up. It's funny, of course, with the lightsaber in video games, there ends up being blasters better. This happens in the Super Star Wars series, and even in this game, since firing out the blaster is a lot easier to hit enemies. Now, when you make it here, you cannot get past this guy by just trying to attack him and walking through him. He'll instantly kill you. Instead, you need to go to your friends menu and talk to C-3PO. Since C-3PO is fluent in so many languages, he talks to the enemy and he just goes away. You don't deal with him again, and you're able to continue your journey into Planet Tina. Thankfully, the laser power-up can really help you out. Just be careful of some enemies coming at you. Just take it slow, keep firing out, and jump over the random bits of fire that do head towards you. When you make it here, take out the enemies and then jump up onto the platforms. Once over to the other side, just keep on going till you see this whale in the background. Once again, you see C-3PO. C-3PO talks to the whale. He's a regular Aquaman. And you can jump on the whale, which gladly takes you across to the next area of the level. The ice fortress that we now have to travel through is another rather difficult area. Be careful, you can use your laser to thankfully take out the stormtroopers and other stuff. In this room, you want to be very careful, destroy the block, and then fall down and immediately hold left on the D-pad to land on the platform below, and then walk quickly through this room as the blocks break. When you're on this platform safely, drop down between the two enemies, firing out at the one on the right, and then using the bit of platforming left to jump up onto the platform above. In this room, jump up, you can just immediately jump between the moving platforms. It doesn't seem like you can make it, but the game allows it. And then you have to do a really difficult jump. Up quickly to these platforms and over the fire. So wait for the fire to get away from you, and just barely you can get past it. Next up, we have a battle against Wampa Vader. Yes, a giant Wampa disguised as Darth Vader. For this fight, after delivering the first hit against Darth Vader, then what you want to do is do your best to avoid the huge leap that the Wampa does. You only have a few frames that you can usually jump over it because its massive stretched arms have a huge hit radius. As you can see, the best strategy is keeping away from it, jumping over it when you can, and delivering those few hits in the moments when he's landed safely on the ground. Do not take any chances in this fight. It's such a hard battle, and I have lost so many runs, and in fact, game overing completely on that fight alone. Right after the fight, though, we're going to use our force abilities to fly up. You can go all the way to the very top where we need to, where we can blast open these blocks to find Chewbacca. The last of the planets we get to travel to is Yavin. Of course, one of the moons, Yavin 4, is the host of the Rebel base, so I'm not sure we're going to one of the other moons, or actually Yavin itself, which should be red from the outside here, but of course I'm sure limitations, plus I doubt they were looking for the correct color for each one of these planets as they were creating this wonderful game. So here we are at Yavin, or Yebin, as it's put in this game, but it's supposed to be Yavin. The first few enemies, the ones on the ground, are pretty easy to deal with. The flying ones are more of a nuisance, but we've gotten used to them for the last couple of areas. However, these bouncing enemies are the worst. A lot of times, I try to just go underneath them if possible, or you have to really kind of time it correctly to take them out with the lightsaber. They bounce quickly, and they cover a decent radius, so a lot of times it's best just to try to take them out if possible. You also want to gather a few crystals throughout the area so you can use some of your force abilities if need be. We have a couple of hard jumps that we're going to have to be doing in a little while, and while the speed power-up can be very useful and the one that we're going to be using, you could also float over it if you use enough of the force powers to do so like we have in other areas of the game. This area is a bit of a maze and will keep on looping. You're actually looking out for a door that's a little bit hidden. Thankfully, it's not too difficult to find, but if you're not looking for it, you may miss it. It's located right up here, so we're going to take out this enemy and jump up and attack these blocks in order to open up the door and then go through, which this area is a bit of a pain jumping through. Unfortunately, when jumping through sometimes, it's easy to make a mistake, just running off the platform as you can see here. Thankfully, you don't lose too much progress in this game whenever you do end up losing a life, so because of that, I just keep on powering through. Here, I want to jump to the left quickly and approach the blocks that are going to break from the right. If you quickly jump up them in this way, you can get past that droid that's going to bounce through real fast, and then you can just come back the other way so you can get to the vine and save Han Solo. Unfortunately, the planet isn't over yet. In fact, we got some tricky areas still to go, as we eventually will then battle with Darth Vader the final time in the game before we take on the Death Star. Be careful of the stormtroopers flying above. If you don't move quickly when they hit the left wall or whatever wall they're flying against, if you don't move away from it fast, they will bounce off and keep coming at you. However, if you do move quickly away, they'll get swallowed up by the wall and disappear. Here you're going to need to use your speed upgrade to kind of help you power through. It only lasts for a few moments, so when you jump to these platforms, you may want to wait a moment and then use the force power again before attempting the next jump. You should have at least enough of the ability to use it several times before you would run out at that point. Just be careful, and you could also use the float if you have a little bit of difficulty just straight up jumping using the run. This area at the very end I hate so much, just constant stormtroopers flying above you. You actually have to destroy a couple of them. If you just try to run through, the game kind of locks up and doesn't let you progress, so it's best to go slowly and take out as many of those stormtroopers on the jetpacks at the end as possible before attempting to go to the right side. You don't want to have too many enemies on screen and the game not allow you to go into this hallway. Thankfully, the hallway opens up at the end after a few turrets and stormtroopers that we have to deal with. Thankfully, we still have the gun with us, but if you've lost it, the saber will still do decent enough. Take out this stormtrooper from behind. I usually like to keep firing to the left of me as I get away from these ton blocks that fall down from the ceiling. And that's because the stormtroopers spawn pretty rapidly right there, and if you don't keep firing, you'll end up getting hit by their blast. In the next room, it looks like you can't get out of it, but use your menu and summon Chewbacca. Talk to Chewbacca, who will then open up the door and you can go through to the next area of this place. And it's another area filled with lots of enemies and tricky jumps. Pretty much every area in this game, right? Right here, hold right against the block before you jump over the short jump over the spikes. The next few are pretty easy to dodge. You can just avoid the enemy above here by going through the blocks on the bottom. If you have the blaster, it's easier, but if you're just using the lightsaber, just be very, very cautious trying to take out the few enemies in front of you at least before making a few jumps. Next up is the Darth Vader fight. Our strategy is going to be similar to the last fight against him. As soon as the battle begins, wait for him to attack and then knock him backwards with one of your attacks. Immediately jump over the projectile he's about to fire out. Talk to Obi-Wan Kenobi from your menu in order to actually be able to damage him just like before. Then get in close, slowly jumping over his attacks, and then jumping over him back and forth. Just keep repeating it. He'll keep attacking forward, and you'll be behind him delivering damage of your own. After a few hits he's defeated, we get to talk to Leia a bit, and now it's time to take out the Death Star. Before, of course, we can make it to the Death Star itself, we have to battle more TIE fighters. I'm sure you haven't gotten sick of that by now. Just like always, just keep on dodging, focus on the shields. Don't mess up like I do and accidentally use 2 shields instead of using 1. It's very easy to use all your shields quickly because every button press counts. It's not like you use it once and there's a little bit of a pause and then you can use it again. You can use all 3 of them and spam them right from the very beginning of the TIE fighter segment and potentially are in trouble. The last part of the game, the Death Star Trench, is as difficult as you're probably expecting it to be. The one plus side of this thing is the map for it is the same every time. While it's difficult to memorize, it's not too bad to put down instructions and keep practicing it till eventually you've learned it, or at least learned where better spots in it are to be. The key to it, though, is not just getting past it, but doing so in the amount of time. You must keep an eye out for and know where all of the time power-ups are. They thankfully are always in the same locations. Same thing goes for the extra lives that are scattered throughout here as well. Every time you cross one of the checkered lines, you know you're getting closer as the numbers start to count down. You also get time added on, so you want to make sure that you're going through as efficiently as you can. You can speed up or slow down at any point. As you go more forward towards the top of the screen, you're going faster. However, you can rev back at any moment in order to get a bit better mobility or quickly try to get out of the way of one of the many, many walls. The thing with the whole path through the Death Star Trench is, well, yes, it's the same every time. There's a few things, like right here, the crisscross pattern, that'll take you a lot of practice, and even after a long time applying it, I still mess up quite a bit. Another thing that makes this difficult is there's a few dead ends along the way as well. They're always the same, but still, not accidentally going down them, like right here, making sure that you go to the right at that crisscross instead of the left, will at least protect one of your lives. Right after that, though, a few moments later, you want to make sure you're on the left, as there's another dead end. During this next segment, around the number 3, you can speed up a little bit. Stay more towards the left side of the screen if possible, that's where 2 of the time things will be, but as soon as you see the second one, immediately go to the right so that you can avoid the incoming wall. You're just going to have to start then doing a bit of a zigzag pattern throughout in order to stay protected. There's going to be an extra life on the right side. Do not go for it. More often than not, you'll just end up losing a life, so there's really no point in it. Thankfully, not long after that is the number 2, followed by a bunch of singular blocks. You can hang out on the left side of the screen to avoid them all, but just be sure to get ready to go to the right side of the screen for the next segment. Everything's coming at you really fast. Once you made it to the number 1, there's a time at the very center, but then you're going to want to start focusing on just going through the hallways, left and right. It'll open up a bit again for a handful of enemies to come your way, but we are near the very end, so just kind of speed through it as quick as you can, keep blasting in front of you, and you'll cross the finish line and get to sit back and enjoy the ending to Star Wars on the Famicom. My favorite part about the ending of this game is the medal ceremony. In the movie, Chewbacca doesn't get a medal, but he finally gets his medal in this wonderful Famicom game. Han, though, doesn't get the medal. I guess he just doesn't care for this particular medal from this game. And then again, really didn't do a whole lot for us during the adventure. At least Chewie did help out a bit. So there you have it, Star Wars for the Famicom from Namco. What a weird game this was. I wish it was a bit more enjoyable, or at least more accessible, so it would be one of those hidden gems or a game you could recommend, but unfortunately, because it's just so frustrating, the platforming at times, it's just one of those games that if it wasn't for trying to actively do a video for it, I would have given up playing a long time ago. After the credits finish up, of course, we stop with the end screen here, and that will wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.